Okay, the reading for this week is the next part in our series on pre-modern, medieval, early modern, and modern Japanese civilization, culture, society, philosophy, and so forth. And today we will be reading excerpts from the Kemmu Shikimoku, or the Kemmu Code, which was written and promulgated in 1336. Okay, so this is the beginning of the Ashikaga Era. And once again, review your Japanese chronology that I'll provide in the description below. We have the Kamakura period that follows the Heian period, right? Kamakura begins 1185, ends in 1333. And then we have a period of 3 years in which there's the Kemmu Restoration, which is referred to in this PDF worksheet. And then we have the Ashikaga, or Muromachi period, beginning in 1336 and continuing all the way to 1573. Okay, and then during that period we have the Sengoku Jidai, or the Warring States period, and then a period of 30 years of unification, 1568 to 1598, in which Japan slowly, as it wars with itself, slowly comes together and unifies, and then followed by the Pax Tokugawa, the long 2.5 century period of peace under the Tokugawa Shogunate, which is 1600 to 1867, all the way up to the Meiji Restoration, and it's followed, of course, by the Meiji period and the advent of modernity and westernization and so forth. So here we are jumping back into the beginning of the Ashikaga period. Okay, so when Ashikaga Takauji, 1305 to 1358, was named shogun in 1336, so 1336 is officially the beginning of the Ashikaga or Muromachi period. He faced a divided polity. A divided nation obviously isn't the right word, so polity is a better word. A divided government. Although the northern court supported his rule, the rival southern court, under the Emperor Go-Daigo, who had led the short-lived Kemmu Restoration of 1333, that I just mentioned, from 1333 to 1336. We have the Kemmu Restoration under the Emperor Go-Daigo. Although the rival southern court claimed the throne. Okay, so although the northern court supported Ashikaga, the southern court under Go-Daigo, Emperor, insistently claimed the throne. In this time of widespread social disorder and political transition, Ashikaga Takauji famously ordered the shogun's capital moved from Kamakura to Kyoto. The Kemmu Shikimoku, or Kemmu Code, was issued as a foundational document in the creation of laws for the new Muromachi shogunate. Okay, so this is a series of laws or codes that were issued for the new Muromachi shogunate under Ashikaga Takauji. The code was drafted by a group of legal scholars headed by the monk Nikkaido Zazen. Okay. And once again, this document is taken from, the English translation is borrowed from Japan, A Documentary History, The Dawn of History to the Late Tokugawa Period, edited by David Liu. I have the book in my office. I don't have it here with me, but it's an excellent resource with translations of all the important, or many of the important documents and historical historical texts from the period between, from late history, from the dawn of history to the late Tokugawa period. Okay, here is the excerpts from the Kemmu Shikimoku. And I should note too that you'll remember that Shikimoku is a word that appears in medieval Japanese literature, especially poetry, quite often. The Shikimoku are the rules, the established conventions and rules and codes that are used in Japanese poetry, renga, linked verse especially. All right, so you might be familiar with this word, Shikimoku, already. Okay, here's the excerpts from the Kemmu Shikimoku. 1336. The way of government, according to the classics, is that virtue resides in good government. And by the classics, of course, he's referring to the Wu Jing Si Shu, right? The 5 classics in the 4 books, which the Japanese of this time would, of course, be familiar with. The way of government, according to the classics, the Wu Jing, especially the 5 classics, is that virtue resides in good government. Virtue is de, right, in Chinese, toku in Japanese. So he's already speaking in a kind of Confucian language from this first sentence. And the art of governing is to make the people content. We must therefore set the people's hearts at rest as expeditiously as possible. These are to be decreed immediately, but its rough outline is given below. Okay, so here are the codes. Let's see, we have 14 in total. Here's code number 1. Frugality must be universally practiced. Okay, so we have this this period, by the way, the Muromachi period, of course, is known for its aesthetic sensibilities, which emphasizes wabi, sabi, and so forth. And you see the sort of ethical foundations for that aesthetic sensibility laid out here in these codes. Frugality, for example, is very important here. Frugality must be universally practiced. Code number 2, drinking and wild frolicking in groups must be suppressed. Okay, so this sense of restraint, which is evident in the art of the time as well, the no theater, no drama of the time as well. 3, crimes of violence and outrage must be stopped. 4, private houses which are owned by former enemies of the Ashikaga are no longer subject to confiscation. 5, the vacant lots existing in the capital city must be returned to their original owners. 6, pawn shops and other financial institutions may be reopened for business with protection from the government. 7, in selecting shugo, remember shugo is this position that arose during the Kamakura period that eventually evolved into the daimyo, or the feudal lords, right? The protectors, these powerful landowners with their own sort of private armies that existed in the that lived out in the provinces and the countryside. In selecting the governors, it's also often translated as well. In selecting shugo, or protectors for different provinces, men with special talents in administrative matters shall be chosen. Okay, so administrative skills are just as important as military skills for this position of the shugo. 8, the government must put an end to interference by men of power and by nobility, as well as by women, Zen monks, and monks holding no official ranks. 9, men in public offices must be told not to be derelict in their duties. Furthermore, they must be carefully selected. 10, under no circumstances can bribery be tolerated. 11, presents received from different quarters while in or out of office must be returned. So again, it's a prohibition against bribery, any form of bribery. 12, retainers who serve closely must be carefully selected. Okay, the retainers, the word in retainers, we'll go over that in class. 13, strive to attain decorum. Okay, so decorum, of course, is li in Chinese, propriety. It's often translated as reigi no rei in Japanese. So again, this underscoring of the Confucian virtues, filial piety, and so forth. And 14, when men of integrity, righteousness, and honor, righteousness, of course, being gi in Japanese, yi in Chinese, men of integrity, and I assume the integrity here is Makoto, the kanji for Makoto. When men of Jung in Chinese, I think, when men of integrity, righteousness, and honor are found, reward them accordingly. Okay, and then the study questions for these Kemmu codes are as follows. 3 questions here. We'll discuss these in class. Number 1, what can you infer about existing conditions in society and the effectiveness of the government in 1336 from this Kemmu Code? Okay, so the Kemmu Code is seeking to rectify problems that are already that are rampant in the society of the time. So what can we infer from the society of time from these codes and that seek to rectify those problems? Question number 2, how do you think these injunctions were enforced? Do you think they were successful? Okay, so who enforced them? Was there some sort of military police that walked around making sure everybody obeyed them? We'll discuss this in class. 3, and do you think they were successful is the next part of the question, and we'll go over more of the historical context of the Ashikaga period in class. And the final question, how would you compare this document to the constitution of Prince Shotoku, or Shotoku Taishi, 604 CE, both of which had 17 articles? So remember the 17 item constitution that Prince Shotoku put forth. How do we compare this set of codes to his? Are they modeled after his? How is their content different? And so forth. All right, we'll discuss more about this in class. I will see you then. Goodbye.